She served as the Attorney General of Florida from 2011 to 2019, and she was the first female elected to that office. On day one of her new role, Attorney General Bondi issued 14 directives, and she hasn't slowed down at all. In fact, just last week, she announced a major blow to the cartels that I just referred to. So, question one, we're going to do a conversation with the Attorney General, and we want her to feel free to take off on any subject that she desires. But let me pose a question or two. Attorney General Bondi, it is wonderful to see you back here. She was here on the very first of these summits 14 years ago, and she's been back a time or two more, and we're thrilled. And we're thrilled that she took the time from a very, very busy schedule to come be with you as you go about your chores of saving lives. That's her goal and ambition. First, let me congratulate you, Madam General, on your promotion as the 87th Attorney General and our nation's chief law enforcement officer. As we begin this conversation, please take a moment to share with us what your priorities are for the department and the nation's men and women in blue who protect us.
All right. I thought you were going to come sit with me.
Yes. Excuse me.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Well, our priorities are pretty easy. President Trump gave us a very clear directive: make America safe again. And that includes going back to the basics of fighting violent crime, and that's the basics. Getting the bad guys off the street, the bank robbers, the armed robbers, the murderers, the violent criminals, the gangs who are bringing all these drugs in our country, but also eradicating drugs from our country. And it's all kinds of crime. And now we're looking at what they did, Chairman, with Tesla. They're firebombing, and those bombs are a weapon of mass destruction. It's crazy to me what they've done, and we've made 6 arrests. And those people are looking at 20 years in prison each, and we are not negotiating, and they have stopped. The bombings have stopped. And, right now they're state charges, but we're currently looking at what they in Pennsylvania. Josh and I were AGs together, and then I see on the news that on the first night of Passover, that man's home was almost blown up. I don't know if all of you saw the pictures on the news. It was horrific. It was horrific what they did to him and tried to burn his house down. I mean, there is hate on both sides of the aisle all across the country. There are crimes, and we're doing everything we can to fight violent crime. I always tell the president we need 10 more hours in every day, but we're going nonstop. And I think the core, like back to the basics, the core, it's the drugs, too, and eradicating the drugs. So that's why you being here, doing this for so many years, and all of you being here, you're saving a life every single day by what you do. So thank you all, and thank you.
Thank you. When we first started this life-saving mission some 20 years ago, Eastern Kentucky, where I live, was dubbed by the state media as the nation's painkiller capital. And Florida was our nation's pill mill capital. Drug trends have changed over the years quite a bit since our first summit. Rather than prescription drug overdoses, synthetic fentanyl from China is now the driving force behind deadly poisonings in America. Where does our nation stand today when it comes to fighting this terrible menace that's impacted all of America? Where do we stand?
It's unbelievable. Every 6 minutes, and I know you on is an American overdoses. They overdose from drug abuse, and specifically fentanyl. You know, you and I were talking backstage about how really when you started prosecuting, it was marijuana. When I started prosecuting, I prosecuted for 18 years before I was state AG and then before I became U.S. AG, and it was cocaine. You know, that was the drug of choice. Then heroin and meth made a comeback. And now it's fentanyl, it's xylazine, it's carfentanil. It's these crazy drugs that are made in China, all made in China, and shipped to Mexico and coming right across the border into our country. And I want to digress for a minute because I don't want to forget to say this. And this is everyone out here. We have to tell, you know, these kids, my first experience with fentanyl was when I was state AG, and no one really knew what it was. I fought my own party on getting it scheduled higher because they were telling me fentanyl is something you get on a patch when you're in the hospital and having surgery. I'm like, no, it's apples and oranges. That's medical fentanyl. This is completely different. And how I learned about it, 3 young men in Tampa Bay, I think it was in St. Pete, dropped dead. And I can't remember if it was Xanax or Adderall, but it was a drug of choice among college students. And they bought it on the street, and it was laced with fentanyl. So if we can tell our kids everywhere I go, I tell everyone, don't take anything from anyone, even if it's a Tylenol. Don't accept anything. You know, and these kids think, oh, it's Xanax, I'm studying for finals, I don't have a... Don't take anything, because I think, Chairman, that's how all of these deaths started. So we've got to still educate kids and stop them from doing this. But that's how the original 3 that I learned about started, and now, of course, it's wildly out of control.
You know, a few years ago, we had the then Attorney General testify before my subcommittee that funds the Department of Justice. And at that time, Florida was the home of the pill mills. Yeah. I mean, they were lining up people by the hundreds to go through a so-called doctor's appointment to get pills. And most of the people going down to Florida to get pills were from my district, East Kentucky and the Appalachian area. Well, the Attorney General, I was telling him, the biggest pill mill we have in this country is in Broward County, Florida. And we had a fairly heated exchange between he and me. And finally I said, you've got the ball. It's in your court. You're the Attorney General in charge of most of the agencies. What are you going to do about the pill mills that you are sworn to eradicate? And I said, it's in Broward County, Florida. Let me spell that for you. It's B-R-O-W-A-R-D. Well, you took the ball and got rid of the pill mills. And that was a major blow for the health and welfare of my constituents at that time.
Thank you. And I worked closely with Jack Conway, who was the Attorney General at the time. I think it was called the Oxy Express.
Yep. And
people would drive down from your state, from West Virginia even, right? From everywhere.
Tennessee.
They would drive to Florida because we had absolutely no regulations, and they were, I called them drug dealers wearing white coats. They were these doctors, and I went all over the state of Florida. This would have been in 2010, 2011, and I went all over the state, and I found out about it when I was running for office, because I was all over the state, and everywhere I went, whether it was a small urban community or a huge, affluent, gated community. Moms were coming up to me, handing me pictures of their children who had overdosed from oxycodone. And after I became AG, I framed all those pictures in my office as a reminder. And that was another one I kind of had to fight my own party initially to educate them on what I was seeing and what was happening. So 98 of the top 100 oxycodone prescribers, these are doctors.
I guess they need to figure out if the DC's better than.
Yeah, looks like they did.
Whether it's cocaine, whether it's fentanyl, whether it's meth, whether it's heroin. But we have a long way to go, and especially with the borders. It's been these drugs have just infiltrated our country, and we have got to keep fighting to eradicate them.
Drug trends have changed quite a bit since our first summit 14 years ago. Rather than prescription drug overdoses, now it's synthetic fentanyl and the like from China. And that's now the driving force in this whole arena of thought. Where does the nation stand today when it comes to fighting this menace that endangers our young people?
It doesn't. President Trump has given us a very, very clear directive with DEA, FBI, working hand in hand. And Homeland Security is a huge part of this because so much of this junk is imported through Mexico, through Canada. But we're working with our counterparts there to trying to stop it from coming into our country. It's also coming in through the mail. We know that. It's coming in on cargo ships. So to back up a second, we just seized in Miami. Last week I was in Miami, and they're mixing this with fentanyl, so this is very important. $500 million of cocaine, $1 billion on a ship coming into our country, and that's pure cocaine before it's cut with the baking powder or the baby, whatever they put in it, the baby powder, the baking soda. They cut it with all this stuff, but they're also lacing it with fentanyl to get people so highly addicted. So we made a huge arrest there, working with the Coast Guard, working with all our partners, our U.S. attorneys down there. We seized, I wrote a note so I got it right, in 2025, just in this year, we have seized 21.5 million fentanyl pills. That's crazy though. And 3,100 pounds of fentanyl. But think how many millions of lives were saved by taking that off the street. You know, we're getting, whether it's a nightclub in Colorado or a drug warehouse in Washington State or somewhere in Southern California, it's all over the country. But working hand in hand with all of my law enforcement agencies, ATF, DEA, FBI, especially DEA on these, but also, again, with Homeland Security, and we all work so well together. We're doing everything we can to get this trash off our streets.
Bless you. Well, we've heard during this summit from the law enforcement agencies, especially DEA, whom I think deserve a place in heaven. I mean, they're hardworking, tough prosecutors. In a matter of just a few months, you and President Trump have drastically improved the conditions at our border. And I want to thank you for that. That's the most important thing perhaps, that we've seen happen. What do you say about that border and what we need to do?
Well, President Trump closed the border right away. Listen, I went to that border in September. I went to that border with my friends Laura Trump and Morgan Ortagus. There is nothing humane happening at that border. Drugs were flowing across our border, flowing. People were walking across our border. 18 to 35-year-old fighting age men. I saw firsthand passports, driver's license, photo IDs just dropped at the other side of the border. And without an ID, they could walk right in. A Chinese national carrying fentanyl could say, "Oh, I'm from Cuba." And they had to believe him if he didn't have ID and let him into our country. It was horrific. And it would take another half an hour or more to talk about the human trafficking, which is another obsession of mine, the sex trafficking, the unaccompanied children coming across the border. Because if you posed as a family unit, it's much easier to walk into our country. And these kids were being smuggled in and out. They called them a disposable child, a recycled child, coming in and out. And the Border Patrol agents recognized this one little boy who kept coming in and out. And they're like, they didn't understand. They finally, like the third or fourth time, recognized him. He was being trafficked. Now, how they were getting him back to Mexico, I don't know, but they were freely bringing him across our border to pose as a family member. So these are the cartels. Cartels grew wildly profitable during the last administration. They did. They're multi-billion-dollar businesses. Look at the cocaine I talked about that we just seized. But they're multi-billion-dollar businesses, and it's flowing into our country. And President Trump said, no more, it's going to stop. No more human trafficking, no more drugs across our border, and we're doing everything we can to stop it. But so many of these drugs are already in our country, and that's why all of you in this audience and you, Chairman, have such a vested interest in this and helping these victims and getting these drugs off our streets.
CDC recently released a promising report featuring a historic reduction in overdose deaths nationwide. Nearly 30% over the last year. And I expect that number to get even better when the borders are almost perfectly secure, that you and the President have engineered. Please share with us your idea of the importance of having that secure border and what it might mean for the fight against fentanyl and others.
Well, it's going to make it a lot tougher for these cartels to get into our country. Sinaloa, there are so many major cartels in our country. Just within the last few days, we arrested a Sinaloa cartel member in Greensboro, North Carolina. What else? 27 members of TDA who had come right across our border were arrested in Oregon, Florida, and New York. And all these, and when I talk about the gangs and the border, these are not people coming to America for a better life. TDA, MS-13, they are terrorist organizations. They are highly organized. Their structure is like a corporate structure. They have, in D.C. a couple weeks ago, we arrested one of the top members of MS-13 living half an hour outside of D.C., in Virginia. They have infiltrated our country. It's organized crime at its worst. They're dealing drugs. They're dealing firearms. This guy had 5 firearms on him, living in a very nice residential neighborhood. And they have an incredible corporate structure. And the higher-ups in the organization, the leaders, insulate themselves. So we worked with Governor Youngkin in Virginia, and it's everyone working together. It's a task force that we all started partnering with states who want to work with us. And that's how we're securing our borders, by getting the people who are already here off of our streets, and that's stopping the drug flow throughout the country. We also recently sentenced a man who was arrested with 14,500 fentanyl pills, and that was in Washington State. So this stuff is all over our country. It's all over our country, and it's killing our kids, it's killing adults, and people are getting highly addicted. So that's why the securing the borders are of utmost importance, but it's got to be it's multifaceted. You know, we can secure the borders as best we can, but then the drugs are already in our country, and the gangs are already in our country, the cartels are already in our country. So it's keeping Americans safe and getting those violent criminals off our streets.
Well, congratulations on all of those great accomplishments. In February, you announced the arrests of 29 Mexican cartel members, including a kingpin who'd been on the DEA's top 10 list for 4 decades. Congratulations for that effort.
Thank you. Thank you.
By the way, that individual was accused of killing a DEA agent, Kiki Camarena, in the 1980s. What more can we expect from your department as it tackles these long-standing, deeply rooted criminal organizations?
More of what I've been talking about, more of what you're seeing, and the drug kingpin that you just referenced. I get a credit for a lot, but it's a team effort. It's not. First, it's all Donald Trump. It's his directive, and everything we do is working with him to keep America safe. If you've ever heard that man open his mouth, he is anti-drugs. And so that was, this guy was Rafael Quintera, and this was a lot of hard work by Marco Rubio in the State Department because he was in Mexico, and he had escaped multiple times. So he killed Kiki Camarena in the 80s. They not only killed him, they tortured him. And Kiki Camarena's family has had to live with this since the 80s. And I got to be part of the phone call to call his widow and his son and tell them that this monster is in custody and was on a plane, and we were all there to greet him when he came back to our country. And will face life in prison. He will be prosecuted in our country, and he will face life in prison. And Kiki's son, Chairman, is a circuit court judge. And we got to FaceTime with his son and talk to his son. And a little trivia is that after his father was tortured and killed, Mrs. Camarena gave her son, who's now the judge, her husband's handcuffs from DEA when he was an agent. And they had them engraved. And guess who was handcuffed with his father's handcuffs in the US of A? Not a great story. So it may take a while sometimes, but they are getting to see justice. And hearing this widow crying for something that happened to her husband in the 80s and her son who's now a judge, that's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
If we can save one life, lock up one bad guy every single day, then hopefully we're making a difference. And the same thank you with what you're doing throughout our country to fight for victims of crime, and all of you. Thank you.
President Trump has designated several of these cartel groups and several other people as foreign terrorist organizations. What does that mean?
So it's what I described for TDA, Trans de Agua, and MS-13. MS-13 are from El Salvador, TDA are from Venezuela. Maduro opened up the prisons and let all of these people walk into our country from Venezuela. No more. And when they are alien enemies of our country for all the reasons we've been talking about, for the reasons you're here. You know, they're killing kids with the drugs. They're killing adults every day with the drugs that they're bringing into this country, the guns that they're smuggling into this country. They're organized crime. MS-13, and what we're able to do is we're charging them with RICO, with racketeering, because they are criminal organizations and they are conspiring to destroy American lives. So we've been prosecuting them that way. I just talked about the one we arrested in Virginia. in Miami, I was in Miami, all the days run together, I think that was 2.5 weeks ago, in Miami, but there were, and I met with the victims' families there, there was a horrific murder where a young man was not a member of the gang, but to rise up in these gangs, to become in the top leadership, you have to kill someone. So it was a cold case. It had been around for a very long time. And these 4 individuals, there were about 11, but 4 were still on the run. And they captured them. All FBI did a great job working with DEA, working with Homeland. Everyone works together. It's a team effort. But they captured these 4 guys. And so what they did to this victim, we had to use an interpreter. I had the families in with us, and these moms were just crying, so relieved that these monsters are off the street now because they're charged with the murder of her son. One of them coerced him to come somewhere with him, and then they stabbed him. I saw the pictures, I saw the crime scene photos, over 100 times. And these guys have been on the run for a very long time, and we got them off the street. One was living in the Northeast, I can't remember which state now. One was living right in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area still. And one, have you all heard of the Villages? It's a high-end retirement community in Florida.
Yeah.
Ready for this? One was hanging drywall in the Villages, living among us. And they were able to capture them, catch them. They're now in custody, and they will be prosecuted as the terrorists and the murderers that they are. And they thought they got away with it.
Yeah. Let me ask our guests a question. Do you feel better about things with her in charge? Huh? There may be something we've not thought about or talked about that you may want to add, General.
No, you know, it's a group effort, and it's DEA, FBI with Kash Patel. We have Terry Cole coming in who's going to run DEA. We're going to have a great new leader of the Bureau of Prisons. It's all of us. It's working with Kristi Noem, Tom Homan, and ICE, and everyone combined, and Marco Rubio was Secretary of State, and Pete Hegseth, DOD, and Tulsi Gabbard, and John Radcliffe, because we all work well together, because we're going to get these murderers back to our state to prosecute them, as the one I talked about earlier. But it's not me. It's a team effort, but it's one man. It's Donald Trump, who put all of us on that cabinet to make America safe again. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. And thank you for the leadership in Congress and what you're doing to help make America safe again and keep America safe.
Great, thank you. We are blessed to have in charge now in the country this great Attorney General. But also, we've got Senator Robert Kennedy coming tomorrow here. And we're all looking forward to that. But having you as the Attorney General, and I'm the chairman of the subcommittee that funds the Department of Justice, so it's important to me personally in my job to be sure that you have all of the weapons that we can arm you with. So thank you for your service to your country and to your fellow citizens, and bless you for your work.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.